Hello everyone. We are already towards the end of week 2, module 8 of this winter session course, and today we discussed issues related to intellectual disabilities. I noticed that many of you addressed issues of attitude and how we are really accepting individuals with intellectual disabilities in our society. And Jennifer, Christine, Abigail, and Nate Jennifer, Christine, Abigail, and Nate found relevant resources addressing such issues. Rachel, Audrey, and Adria, they talked about different teaching strategies, community-based instruction, person-centered planning. Taylor and Ashley, Lindsay, Megan, and Delane were addressing different issues related to what are intellectual disabilities, characteristics. Resources of Megan and Delane were very broad and addressed various issues within the websites. Taylor's resource focused mainly on identification process of students with intellectual disabilities. This whole picture is complete with Sophie's resource on inclusion of students with intellectual disabilities in general education classroom. So I think overall you address the objectives that we had targeted for this module. I hope that in this module you learned who are students with intellectual disabilities. How much do you really know about these students? Have you ever worked with them? Have you ever had them in your classrooms while you were growing up? There's another term that has been used before for this group of individuals, and it is the term mental retardation. What connotation do you associate with the term mental retardation? And what do you associate with the term intellectual disability? Over approximately the last 50 years, the term used most often to describe this disability has been mental retardation. In fact, IDEA still uses the term mental retardation, defining it as significantly sub-average general intellectual functioning, existing concurrently with deficits in adaptive behavior and manifested during the developmental period that adversely affects a child's educational performance. But national organizations that advocate for these students and their parents have abandoned the term mental retardation in favor of the term intellectual disability. As you can see in a resource that Ashley posted, as well as in other resources that talk about intellectual disability, I want you to understand that this is the term that we as educators have to use when describing these individuals instead of other terms like cognitive disability or mental retardation. So these are the terms that we have to stay away. Intellectual disability, as described even here in this video and in other resources that you have, is characterized by significant limitations both in intellectual functioning and in adaptive behavior as expressed in conceptual, social, and practical adaptive skills. And as seen in the video here, the last part of the definition is that this disability originates before age of 18. So what are the characteristics that we will see in these children? I thought that the resource addressing characteristics of students with intellectual disabilities did a great job on identifying what are some of the main issues that we have to really concentrate when working with these children. It looks like this resource identified two main problems as academic performance and cognitive performance. So what we have to be really careful is that these are the students who usually are going to exhibit difficulties in all academic areas, with reading being the weakest. Also, they will have issues in regard to problem solving in math. Another area of difficulty might be communication area. So even though they might follow the same sequence of language acquisition as typically developing children, they will reach that at a slower pace. Researchers have found that there is strong correlation between intellectual ability and language development. So the higher the IQ, the less pervasive the language difficulty. And since these are the children whose intellectual ability is impaired, then consequence on the language impairment will depend a lot on their intellectual impairment. Speech disorders such as articulation errors, stuttering, and so forth are very common. Oftentimes, their vocabulary is very limited, and also we'll notice grammatical structure and sentence complexity that is oftentimes impaired. In regard to social development, these are the students who typically lack in social competence. Usually, these are the students who are rejected by peers and their classmates because they display poor interpersonal skills. Because they frequently exhibit socially inappropriate or immature behaviors, they have difficulty establishing and maintaining friendships with their peers. They usually demonstrate also diminished self-esteem, which is paired with low self-concept. These students demonstrate inability to attend to critical or relevant features of a task. They have diminished attention span and also difficulty ignoring distracting stimuli. In regard to memory, they have deficits in memory, in the ability to selectively process and store information. They have difficulty with short-term memory and also long-term retrieval. It is not unusual for students with intellectual disability to approach a learning situation with heightened anxiety. A history of failure in earlier encounters contributes to this generalized feeling of apprehension. Consequently, these are the students who seem to be less goal-oriented and lacking in motivation. These are the students who have a tendency to display learned helplessness. Learned helplessness is that perception that these students have that no matter how much effort they put forth, failure is inevitable. So they will say that no matter how hard I try, I won't be successful. This expectancy of failure frequently causes students with intellectual disability to stop trying, even when the task is one that they are capable of completing. It is not unusual for students with intellectual disabilities to experience difficulty in transferring or generalizing knowledge that is acquired in one context to a new or different setting. Taylor provided us with a nice resource regarding identification of students with intellectual disabilities. The process of identification starts with observations. Usually this comes from medical personnel observation. The student, it seems, to not attain appropriate development milestones or has characteristics of a particular syndrome associated with intellectual disability. Also, teachers and parents may observe a student that is not learning as quickly as their peers, has difficulty retaining and generalizing learned skills, or they might notice that child has low motivation or has more limitations in adaptive behaviors than peers in the general education classroom. Then the assessment measures start with screening or classroom work products. Usually with medical screening, it starts with a physician using different tests before the child enters school. In classroom work products, teachers will see that the student has difficulty in academic areas in the general education classroom, reading comprehension, and also teacher might notice also that reading comprehension and mathematical reasoning and application are limited. In the pre-referral stage, the teacher might implement suggestions from the school-based team, but the student still performs poorly in academic areas and also continues to manifest impairments in adaptive behavior despite interventions. If, in spite of intervention, the student still performs poorly in academic areas or continues to manifest impairments in adaptive behaviors, then the child is referred to a multidisciplinary team. This non-discriminatory evaluation incorporates individualized intelligence tests, adaptive behavior scales, anecdotal records, curriculum-based assessment, and direct observations. The process ends with the non-discriminatory evaluation team determining that the student has intellectual disability and needs special education and related services. Then the IEP team will proceed with the IEP meeting and develop an appropriate individualized education program for the child. Many of your resources address relevant issues in regard to students with intellectual disabilities and how we are supporting them in these inclusive settings if they are already there. Despite the contemporary trend toward educating students with disabilities in a more normalized settings, students with intellectual disabilities are still more than 3 times as likely as other students with exceptionalities to be educated in separate class. Statistics show that even if only 14% of all individuals with disabilities are educated in self-contained classrooms, of this number, almost half of them are students with intellectual disabilities. While watching Christine's video, I noticed that she was talking about the misconceptions that people usually have about students with intellectual disabilities. Actually, educators and other professionals no longer consider students with intellectual disability to be incapable of learning. To be successful, These students require an instructional program that is individualized to meet their unique needs. In order for them to succeed, it is important that we provide instruction that is comprehensive and functional, and also we equip them to the maximum extent possible with experiences they need to live and work in their respective communities, both now and in the future. Some of your sources talk about community-based instruction, and this is very important because it teaches students functional skills in the environment in which they would naturally occur rather than in simulated settings. When talking about students with intellectual disabilities, however, it is very important that we offer them a functional curriculum. A functional curriculum is a curriculum that instructs students in the life skills they require for successful daily living and prepares them for those situations and environments they will encounter upon leaving school. In a functional curriculum, academic skills are applied to everyday practical life situations. For example, students will learn to calculate change, to follow directions in a cookbook, to read washing instructions, or to complete a job application. Overall, I cannot stress enough the importance of individually crafted instructional programs for these students. In order for them to succeed, it is important that the curriculum is individualized and emphasizes academics as well as adaptive skills. Nice job in this module again, everyone. Looking forward to reading your post in tomorrow's module. Thank you.